everyone, it's draft time. Time to talk about the upcoming draft. A lot of exciting prospects. Corstian and I can only limit us to six today to talk about, but
Mm,
we're starting to dive in, prepare for the NFL draft. Lots of hype here. At the time of this recording, I haven't been able to upload last week's episode, so things have been like really behind. Just had a massive storm hit over the weekend. I was kind of talking to Core about it. Drove through a tornado, but ended up okay. So, yeah, kind of worried there for the podcast. But, Corsian,
mhm.
how was your weekend?
It's good. It's chill. Uh, Made tomato pesto soup yesterday, which really isn't the weekend, but it's something that happened, which is cool.
What'd you put in it? I'm very curious to hear about this.
Yeah, so I roasted with obviously tomatoes, carrots, onions, and garlic, and I blended that with vegetable broth. Uh, and then I put that into a pot, put some pesto in, mix that up, and then had cheese tortellini that I threw into.
Oh, nice. Okay, so you kind of had like a
hmm
ravioli, oh, sorry, tortellini soup kind of mix.
Yeah,
Very
it
interesting.
was it was good.
I made my own mushroom gravy for the first time. I put my own spin on
hmm
it. So I didn't have beef broth, so it was kind of or beef stock, I should say.
hmm
So I didn't get the color I wanted from the gravy, but I kind of threw in, didn't get the exact taste of it. So I threw in some onion and garlic powder in there, and some Korean
hmm
chili flakes, and I just threw that in for the heck of it, and it actually tastes really good. I was surprised at myself.
hmm
I'm like, I'm absolutely a capable young independent man. So
hmm
very happy about that.
Yeah.
Um, we're moving up in the world, man. We're moving up.
hmm Good job.
That's all I want. Of course, Jan's approval.
Yeah.
Yeah. So today we are covering some sort of our favorite prospects from three position groups, being fantasy gurus, of course, but also dynasty
hmm
fiends. We're also like doing our logo scouting, player
hmm
scouting as furiously as we could. So,
hmm
Corson and I picked one favorite player from each of the quarterbacks, running backs, and wide receivers that we'd like. Talk a little bit about why, and then like kind of where we see the team fits with it. So, we'll start with quarterbacks, move on to running backs, and then go into the receivers. Plenty to
hmm
like in this draft class. Plenty of surprises when you look at like the national media. Um, Speaking of which, I'm gonna pull up an NFL mock draft just to try and compare like if some of these guys that I have are even
hmm
like in this list. So it should be very interesting. NFL.com right now is not cooperating with my Wi-Fi, so
Yeah.
we
Super
will
hip.
go ahead and ignore it. Um,
hmm
I'll start off with myself on my favorite QB prospect. Among the top like 10 picks, not even discussed in like round one. It's very interesting why not, but um, I think he's right along with the top of the class. Granted, we've talked a little bit about this
hmm
last year, but if I had to pick like Cam Ward, like among like last year's candidates, he's kind of like the buzz. Like he's
hmm
surefire going to Tennessee, like
Yeah.
from the sounds of the mocks, because again, they can't roll out Will Levis for the season next year.
hmm
But if I'm looking at if I'm looking at Cam Ward compared to the quarterbacks of last year, I don't think I'd take him over anybody. Really, I wouldn't even take him over Michael Penix, even though we only saw him
hmm
for like 2 games and stuff.
Yeah.
Just from like the talent level perspective. Now, can Ward get there? Yeah, but I don't really see him as like the generational Patrick Mahomes that
hmm
people think. Even though he has a filthy arm and he could throw with the best of them. Like the speed at which the ball leaves his hand is incredible. But like comparing it to last year's class, I don't think he's as good as some of the quarterbacks at the top there. But this guy is not even being discussed with like Shador Sanders or Cam Ward,
hmm
and I talked about a little about him last week. So if you're listening, it shouldn't be really a surprise. But it's Jalen Milroe out of Alabama. I really like this guy from a quarterback perspective just because of his decision making and like knowing when to run, when to pass. Like I know he had an awful like Senior Bowl if that's
hmm
being counted in the scouting report, but again think about the Senior Bowl, like you getting all these receivers that you haven't really played with, and you're trying to make sense of it. And
Yeah.
then there was talk about his small hands, and I'm like, did you not see his 40 time? His 40 time was insane. Like it's like he didn't run it at the combine, but like he has a fast enough speed where like you have to worry about him on the ground, like in
Mhm.
game structure. And
Yeah.
just because of that, like he's automatically the fastest quarterback in this class. Like
Mhm.
it's you've seen it happen with Jalen Hurts, Lamar Jackson. Like you can mold them into great talents, and I think whichever team lands him will be like the
Mhm.
smartest team out there. So if like the Raiders somehow end up with Jalen Milroe, that would be an ideal situation. Um, but I think him switching from Saban to what's that coach's name? He used to coach Washington. Shoot, what's his name? He's Alabama's current coach. Why can't I think of him?
Kalen
Kalen DeBoer.
DeBoer.
Kalen DeBoer. Like having him for 1 year as an offensive mind, I think it's very similar to Jalen Hurts going to Lincoln Riley. So I'm not saying he's
Mhm.
going to be the next Jalen Hurts, but I think he's shown the ability where he can manipulate like linebackers and nickelbacks, like with processing. Like he can
Mhm.
manipulate defenders well. He's the best pocket passer in this class. Um, like he doesn't have like the sharpest motion throwing the ball,
Mhm.
but like I think he I think he can get the job done, and he understands the
Mhm.
game well from a post processing standpoint. The one thing I'm worried about is touch for him, but I
Yeah.
think in a league where it's just offensively driven, you're not going to
Mhm.
see him be put in these situations. Like he's going to make the right decisions. So
Yeah.
I think early on, like especially against the cover two, he might struggle. Like if he's trying to like
Mhm.
sneak it in windows where the touch and his arm can't handle it. But I think within the first 3 seasons, you're going to start to see him like really make an impact on a franchise.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. I think this draft class, at least with the quarterbacks, has a really strong like post first round kind of group of guys where I feel scared. I mean, there's like Cam Ward, but like I feel scared of a lot of these quarterbacks. Like a team with a high draft pick being feeling desperate for a quarterback. Taking a lot of these guys in the first, but I think a lot of these guys are great, like second round talents, like a Jalen Hurts almost, where it's like there's obviously, or like even Lamar, who was taken at the end of the first, where it's like you have a lot of, it's like a, it's kind of like raw prospects, I guess, where you have like obviously there's blatant issues that you can kind of identify on tape, but there's a lot of good that you also see on the tape, but it's not necessarily like so mind blowing that you're like, oh, I got to take these guys at the top of the draft. But guys like Jalen Milroe, I think you kind of you it felt pretty spot on with him. Like we saw the improvement, we saw how he did in DeBoer's scheme, and so it's like I like him as a prospect too.
And it doesn't hurt when you're throwing it to Ryan Williams. I'll say that.
Hmm.
But
Yeah.
again, if you look at all the receivers on each of these NFL franchises, like every single team has a star wide receiver. There's been so many
Hmm.
good wide receivers, so like that's not going to be an issue
Hmm.
for him coming into the league,
Yeah.
especially when he's not ranked at the top of the class.
Hmm. Yeah.
Who you
Yeah, so
got?
it'll be yeah. Okay, so for my guy, um, I don't know. It's like I'll straight up. It's Jackson Dart, um, from Ole Miss. With him, I feel like he's a like fun raw prospect to kind of follow, where it's like he's a 3 year starter. At I think he's a 3 year starter in college, which I think says a lot just about the caliber of his play. He's able to start pretty early on. Has played good football. I feel like he's improved every season, and I think that's kind of like the best thing, or one of the better things that you have going for him. Um, where like we've seen that as he's gotten older, he's played better football, which is something that bare minimum that you like to see. I know there's quarterbacks that like feel stagnant throughout the entirety of college, or they switch programs and then they like kind of regress, or or not even live up to expectations. But I feel like we've seen that steady growth with Jackson Dart, which makes me excited. But he also does feel like a pretty raw prospect nonetheless. Um, in like similar ways, I mean, not athletically to Anthony Richardson, but in a similar way of like there's a lot of things that he can improve. Same with like Will Levis. I think there's a lot of things that you can kind of see similar in the game in the play style and the fact that they on like college tape at least. Uh, you see I mean the highlights, but then you see the weaknesses with this kind of certain anticipation throws, specifically in zone coverage of Jaxson Dart, that you would like to have done better, but then you've seen like the good. Again, like he's done exceptionally well against man coverage from I guess from what I've read at least. Um, and so he's interesting just because he's a guy that I think should be taken. I mean, there's a chance he gets taken maybe middle to the back end of the first round, but I'm comfortable with him being like a second, a third round kind of guy, where he can go to a team where he has more opportunity to kind of sit back, develop, and kind of like have a chance to adjust to NFL game speed. And I think that's where he can really excel. Because, like I said, that he is a really raw talent, similar, I think, in some ways to Will Levis. And so if it doesn't go right, I feel like being a having being like a Gardner Minshew, kind of like long term, is in the realm of possibility. But then at the same time, I think the way he plays football can be have like some similarities to what we've seen in Brock Purdy so far in his career. And so I think just that potential upside is what kind of gets me excited about Jaxson Dart.
Yeah, I like what you said. I think it's fine in the shallow and intermediate passes. I think he's really, really
Mm-hmm.
good. The one thing that scares me is anything if you ask him to make a throw like 25 to 30 yards plus down the
Mm-hmm.
field. That's where he's because that's you'll see like he'll throw wide
Mm-hmm.
over receiver's head, like over everybody's head underneath. Like he just doesn't have the
Mm-hmm.
accuracy there right now with his
Yeah.
current fundamentals.
Mm-hmm.
If he figures that out, he's right at the top of this class. 100% right at the
Mm-hmm.
top of this class. But some of it is like his footwork because like when you get pressure and he's still trying to throw in the pocket, that's when you get worried. But when he's able to make that decision to escape the pocket, not too
Mm-hmm.
worried. So
Yeah.
it's just one of those things where it's like, what are you gonna do when Joey Bosa on the Bills is bearing down
Mm-hmm.
on you, and you have
Yeah.
nowhere to scramble? Like, how's your accuracy then?
Mm-hmm.
That
Yeah.
and for like 75% of quarterbacks, they're not going to be able to like throw it
Mm-hmm.
accurately. So like for him
Yeah.
to reach like the top echelon, like he's got to be able to find the footwork under pressure down the field 25 30 yards.
Yeah.
So for him, that's like if I'm going into like a scheme that's not the best and not perfect, like let's
Mm-hmm.
say like he's sitting behind Dak, I wouldn't
Yeah.
like that for him. But if he's
Mm-hmm.
but if he's on like Kevin O'Connell's scheme or Kevin Stefanski's scheme, I like that a lot more because they can at
Mm-hmm.
least set him up to like thrive in the intermediate areas or give him the talent to be able to like
Mm-hmm.
erase those mistakes. He's like, because you're not going to be
Mm-hmm.
able to throw wide at Justin Jefferson by so much or like overhead by so much. I don't think he's
Yeah.
that bad, but I think that is a concern of mine where it's like team fit and development is super crucial for him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Cool. Cool.
Yeah, I mean, going to the running backs, I could have honestly said Ashton Jeanty or Jonty.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure how you pronounce
Yeah.
his last name. Um, but I'm trying to hold out hope that the Bears can get him because I think he's absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
Like his his ability is just rare. So for the sake of
Mm-hmm.
this podcast, I'm not including him on this list. He would obviously be my top favorite one. That being
Mm-hmm.
said, there's a lot of great running back prospects. Um,
Yeah.
I was almost tempted to put Caleb Johnson on here because I like his
Mm-hmm.
game a lot,
Mm-hmm.
but I saw this guy out of Ohio State, and I love his game completely when
Mm-hmm.
watching the film. Quinshon Judkins. If Ashton GT wasn't in this class, he'd be number one on the board by far.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think he's slightly underrated because he's swinging the backfield with like Henderson and didn't really get a
Mm-hmm.
chance to shine with like the amount of receiving talent on
Yeah.
Ohio State as well. But I think um, he's honestly a prospect that like any team would like love having. Like if the Chiefs got him, I'd be really, really worried.
Mm-hmm.
So um, I think he has explosiveness. He's a three
Mm-hmm.
down back. He can read and set up defenders well. He knows when to be patient and decisive on like inside runs, which is super important. He
Mm-hmm.
knows how to run through tight creases and set up against like leverage when it's not there. Like
Yeah.
and he could also break loose for like breakaway runs. So like he's not a guy that's
Hmm.
like a banger type like a Kenneth Walker. Even though
Yeah.
Kenneth Walker can break, like he's not like the not like that type.
Hmm.
Um, I see him probably as like a mix of like Jonathan Taylor and Chris Carson, where like
Yeah.
I think he's like somewhere between that. And if you're telling me you're getting a player like that, that would be
Hmm.
the perfect running back for a team, man.
Yeah.
So I love Jetson's game. I think he could do it all. He can catch passes as well as anybody. Um,
Hmm.
like he has great pass protection as well against like linebackers shooting for the A gap. So I'm not too worried
Hmm.
about that. Um, so like he has the ability to like outsmart defenders in the box and also outrun them.
Hmm.
And I think that's critical for a running back.
Hmm. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, he's one of my favorite prospects too. Obviously, it's a loaded running back class this upcoming draft, which is really makes it exciting. Um, yeah, I felt like I was trying to be like you. I was trying to avoid like the top prospect because obviously everybody he's the top Genti's the top prospect for a reason. We didn't talk about specifically Cam Ward for the same exact reason. Um, yeah, so there's a couple guys. I remember when I was looking at this the list of running backs a second ago. Um, because I mean like obviously like Hampton, Henderson, Judkins, Johnson. I mean like all the way down to Scabetto. Like there's a lot of guys that I really like. My favorite guy here though, or not my favorite necessarily, but a guy that I'm really excited for is Devin Neal from Kansas. Um, he has been like a guy on my radar for the last couple of months. I feel like he. I mean, if you look at the stats, and obviously stats are only part of it, but like you look at the stats for the Kansas Jayhawks, and it feels like he's kind of been like what's consistently kept them in football games. The quarterback, what's his name, Jalen Daniels, is really inconsistent and more bad than good. I'd like to say. Um, and so he was just kind of like good, like solid piece of their offense every year. I think he led the team in rushing as well. So literally from the bat, from the get go, Devin Neal was the leading rusher for their team, which I think says a lot about just the caliber of his play. But I'd say he's more one dimensional, which is why he isn't necessarily as like high on the list as I maybe have some of these other guys, just because he's just kind of a solid, I feel almost generic downhill runner, if that's what I'm going to call him, I guess. But I think um, for being like kind of just a downhill bruiser kind of back in my head at least, I think that he's good at what he does, and I like his size metrics. He's like what
Five
two?
eleven, I think.
He's 5'11". He was like 215. I
Two
think
thirteen,
technically
215. Yeah.
230. Yeah, and then he ran like a 4.58 or 4.6 40, which I like for that that size build and the kind of runner that he is. So like I don't necessarily have him like going super high in the draft, but like if he gets drafted in like the fourth round or higher, obviously I'm super excited for that. Um, but like again, it's just like a general build similar to I don't know, similar in a way to what I see in like Blake Corum, and obviously Blake Corum he wasn't like the craziest high of draft picks either, but um, it's kind of like that style of player, which obviously we were excited about Blake Corum going into last offseason or into the last year's draft, and so it's kind of similar with Devin Neal for me here.
Yeah. I didn't watch him too much, but what I like about him is his ball security is really,
Hmm.
really nice. You don't see him fumbling the ball a lot.
Hmm.
He knows how to find good cutback lanes. A majority of the
Yeah.
runs I saw were very perimeter oriented though. So I'm really
Uh-huh.
interested to see how he does on like inside runs. Now I know he's run dual a lot, but um if he lands with the 49ers, I think it'll be less than an issue because they tend to run like a lot of perimeter
Hmm.
like style runs, like Dolphins, Packers, like those, even Falcons with the way they use like Bijan and Algier, like those would
Hmm.
be like good fits from him from like what he can do best. Um, Yeah. I think the other issue with him is like you kind of mentioned it with the one dimensionality. I think
Mhm.
his route running could use a little bit of work. He does a good job tracking the ball against like linebackers and stuff, but
Mhm.
um, yeah, I if it were me, I would pick other running backs ahead of him. I see the
Mhm.
appeal though, like if you're looking at like a day two pick and you want to invest in like the offensive line or defensive line or like receivers, like
Mhm.
or like ahead of that. Like
Mhm.
certainly he has definite value on like first and second down. What concerns
Mhm.
me is like the three down aspect you might want out of him.
Mhm.
I don't think he
Yeah.
can provide that, but
Mhm.
not many backs can. Like it's very
Mhm.
few, and the few that
Yeah.
are getting paid very well. So.
Yeah.
Okay, ready to go on to the receivers?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, this guy is kind of like a 1B in the college offense, but like I'm talking about, but like I think he's equally as good as like his counterpart, if you ask me.
Mhm.
Last year I talked a lot about like Lad McConkey and Xavier Worthy, and
Mhm.
um, it's funny how he looks like he's just as good as his predecessor. I like to think of him as like Marvin Mims, but without like as many like route running issues.
Mhm.
I think Isaiah Bond has definitely a great chance to make an impact. He's a classic receiver where you look at him, and again,
Mhm.
I'm going to say the same thing about Worthy. He's really, really fast. And
Mhm.
like you think and immediately in your head, deep threat. And I got to be worried
Mhm.
about him like running past receivers. But he knows how to attack targets. He knows how to
Yeah.
like set up defenders. He's a dangerous guy with the ball in his hands. He doesn't have the size that you want as a wide receiver one. What
Mhm.
is he? He's like 5'11", 180 pounds. So not exactly what you want. But like if I'm telling you you're getting like a T.Y. Hilton, like that could be like your wide receiver two
Mhm.
out of this guy, I bet you'd be super excited. So
Mhm.
yeah, I really like I really like his ability, especially against man to man coverage. I think it's pretty underrated.
Mhm. Yeah. Uh, Isaiah Bond is good. I mean, the duo is really good. Uh, just so happens my guy was Matthew Golden. Just heads up, I guess.
Awesome.
And so you're talking about the duo, and then I was like, well, I feel like the iconic duo going into this draft is Bond and Golden. And so he started talking about like, oh, this guy, he's like a nice 1-2 punch on the college team or whatever at the receiver room, and I'm like, dang it, this is gonna be Texas, isn't it? Yeah, and then you said, yep,
100%.
it's
You
Isaiah,
got
and
me.
then you're like Isaiah Bond, and I'm like, dude, no, I mean, in a way, I'm just glad that you didn't necessarily say Matthew Golden because I was like, dude, imagine we just picked the same guy, but
Yeah, how could I steal your guy, you know?
yeah, but yeah, I mean, both these guys, um, elite playmakers. Um, yeah, I feel like I mean, obviously, both of these guys have like really good speed. Um, but my favorite thing with Matthew Golden was just his like, I guess, I feel like he looked better at like some of the contested catches where like each week he'd make like a ridiculous circus catch, um, that you would be like, no way, who is this guy? I guess I'd say the biggest knock though is just like sometimes he has like concentration drops, just like in the open, which is something obviously that it's concerning. That sometimes just kind of lingers. I feel like we can look at Quentin Johnston as kind of like a clear example of that, where like in the NFL, he'll make crazy circus catch. Last season specifically, you'll see him make like a crazy circus catch, but then like two plays or in one game, he'll be making these, and then the next game he'll have like four targets and like three drops and just like one incompletion or something, and you're like, oh, we're back to this again. And then the next week you'll have him make three catches for like 180 yards and two touchdowns, and you're like, this is the man I want. But then, so I feel like Matthew Golden can have some of those similar struggles, but I feel like we've seen less of those drops. But he just kind of like a guy that you envision being a smaller, shifty guy, but has more of the size to be a dominant like number one or two receiver, which I was excited about.
Golden gives me a lot of Jaden Reed vibes. if you
Mhm.
watch him. Like I hear you on the concentration shots, but I actually think his hand-eye coordination is like
Yeah.
really, really good for a
Mhm.
player like that, especially with the amount of speed he has. When he has the ball thrown to his numbers, he attacks it well. Like at the
Mhm.
earliest opportunity, you get it.
Mhm.
I think where you can run into trouble is if he's pinned on the boundary, for whatever
Yeah.
reason. Like I don't foresee that with him. I think he'll be used as like a slot machine weapon that can also win
Mhm.
outside, like where you
Mhm.
short motion outside. That's what I see him do. But like if you ask him to win one on one against I
Mhm.
don't know Pat Surtain, like
Mhm.
down the sideline on the boundary, like he doesn't have the best
Mhm.
technique, and most of the time like Surtain will probably win those. But like I
Yeah.
think I think his speed, like and his ability to beat people deep,
Mhm.
along with like his ability to like have the counter punch to like stop on the dime and get those intermediate routes,
Mhm.
very good. Like these guys are probably ranked very similar to top of class.
Mhm.
I honestly just talked about Bond just because many people weren't talking about him, and
Mhm.
I think they're in the same tier. But yeah,
Yeah.
Matthew Golden, like real more like Jaden Reed, like Isaiah Bond, more like T.Y. Hilton.
Mhm.
I think both will be like great assets to a team. Like if the
Yeah.
Bears can get one of them, I'd be super happy. Like
Mhm.
they have like solid deep threats that can win like anywhere on the field. Um, yeah, just two great
Mhm.
players, especially with Golden. Like I feel comfortable telling him to go one on one against somebody. Like
Yeah.
if our schematics not working, like
Mhm.
he can be a go to guy in the league in 2 or 3 years.
Mhm. Yeah. And I think what helps, at least for me too, like helping Golden's case over Bond is just like his breakout season this last year where he put up almost 1,000 yards, had 9 receiving touchdowns, and this is all while Quinn Ewers was at the quarterback, which is disappointing. I was excited. I was like hoping that like, oh, maybe Quinn Ewers, he kind of like steps into his own this season, but we didn't quite see that as much as we did. So it'd be kind of exciting to have seen these two play this year with maybe more of an established college quarterback. Because I think we could have seen both these guys have even better seasons than what they did right now. But um, yeah, I think we've seen a lot, especially with like I mean like Isaiah Bond as well. We've seen him get some more rushing attempts, which I think is what something you probably like. I mean, there's only a couple carries, but like they were explosive carries whenever he had the ball, which I think just says what you talked a lot about like his explosive playmaking ability, which I think you know is what you're a huge fan of in terms of wide receivers that you look at. And then I think Matthew Golden fits slightly more into like the traditional receiver role. Um, where I mean, obviously, I mean, you mentioned Patrick Surtain. I don't know how many receivers in the league can actually like beat that one-on-one matchup against
Right.
Surtain, but
Luther
I
Burden might.
yeah.
Luther's really really good if you watch him. He's he.
Hmm.
I was like saying okay maybe Travis Hunter, but like unfortunately like I don't think Travis is going to be used as like a receiver because there's a
Hmm.
lot more value at cornerback. Like he could be on gadget plays and stuff like that. But if
Hmm.
I'm looking for a receiver like out of this class to be Pat Surtain, it's probably only Burden. But like
Hmm.
it's just that example was just meant to like highlight kind of the weakness in Golden's game and where it might show up. But
Hmm.
if you're talking about any team fits, like imagine either one of them in Miami with
Hmm.
Jalen Wall and Tyreek Hill. Like
Hmm.
I know Malik Washington had a great season, but
Hmm.
Golden Bond are on different levels. So
Hmm. Yeah, and then also, I guess I'm just going to be comparing these two receivers just because we both mentioned they're on the same team. So another factor of me liking Golden would just like the weight as well, alongside the height and speed. Whereas like they're both roughly the same height, 5'11", 6 feet tall. But Golden does have about 10 to 15 ish pounds on Bond, and still had that speed, which I think helps, I guess, boost some of my excitement for him. But it always feels scary getting hyped over like a last season breakout kind of player where you're like, is this just like a 1 year kind of thing, or is how sustainable is the caliber of this play? But um, yeah.
I hear you, man. I hear you. I
Hmm.
can't believe you're judging players on their weight. That's how rude of you.
Yeah.
Dang. So okay, okay, Corstian, I see
So
you.
you also
You're
cut
judging
out,
it
so
just
I
on their
could.
height and weight. Okay.
Oh, that's what you said. I heard like you cut out, and so like I heard part of it, but okay. Um, but I mean, we talked about his stats too. I talked about his 900 receiving yards. Uh, 40-yard dash time. He ran a 4.29. That's crazy. Um,
Yeah.
yeah,
I just hope neither one of them get to Kansas City.
yeah, yes, sir.
That would suck.
Yeah,
They need
send
to
him to
they need to
Green
get
Bay or
offensive
something.
linemen. Oh, screw you. Okay, I hope they go to Kansas City. Screw you. But honestly, team fits.
hmm
Cincinnati, I love the fit.
hmm
Imagine Josh Allen just bombing into one of these guys. Love
Oh
the
yeah.
fit. Miami, like I mentioned, like
hmm
San Francisco could sure use a guy like this,
hmm
like after letting go of Debo, um,
Yeah.
to help free up
Uh,
Ayuk and like a lot of the
uh-huh.
contending teams could use like these two receivers right now.
Yeah.
For sure. So hopefully that some of these prospects give you great ideas on like who to draft in your dynasty leagues or who to keep on
hmm
your radar for redraft.
Yeah.
Plenty of more prospects to come. We just thought we'd start out the draft talk like this. So expect some more position groups to be talked about. And
hmm
um, thank you guys so much for all your support. Corstian, any last thoughts for this fine group of ours?
Um, so all I gotta say is peace.
Take it easy, guys.
Woo!